Good morning, everyone. I'm Esther Manheimer, Mayor of the City of Asheville, and I'd like to welcome you to the January 22nd, 2026 Agenda Briefing Work Session. All council members and staff are participating virtually. This meeting is intended for discussion purposes only. No formal actions or votes will be taken, and in addition, no public comment is taken during this meeting. The live meeting will be streamed on the city's YouTube channel, accessible through the YouTube icon on the city's website or via the live stream. You also have the option to listen to the meeting live via phone by calling 855-925.
Good morning.
Councilmember Kim Roney.
Good morning.
Councilmember Maggie Ullman.
Hey, y'all.
Councilmember Shanika Smith.
Good morning.
Assistant City Manager Ben Woody.
Good morning.
Assistant City Manager Jade Dundas.
Jade should be on shortly. He's at an appointment.
Oh, okay, thanks. And City Attorney Brad Branham.
Good morning.
City Clerk Maggie Burleson.
Good morning.
And now I'm going to turn it over to our City Manager, DK Wesley.
Thank you, Mayor. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the agenda briefing. As per tradition, on today, we will be reviewing the agenda for our January 27th business meeting. Assistant City Manager Ben Woody will be reviewing that. That meeting will be held in person unless something changes before now and then. And at 10 a.m. So this is a change in our regularly scheduled time. That meeting will be January 27th, again, council chambers in person at 10 a.m. Today, we will walk through items of interest on that agenda. We also have a public safety committee scheduled for Thursday, January 29th at 11 a.m. Assistant City Manager Jay Dundas will review that agenda. And then we'll have a look forward on our 8-week agenda items coming forward to council. We do have 2 items today under other items or updates. Our Finance Director, Tony McDowell, will be providing an audit update, and that's actually item E on the agenda for the 27th. And then also we'll have a discussion around our grievance process, which is item I on the agenda. Also, I want to make a note that there will be a community briefing today at 1 p.m. hosted by Buncombe County. City staff will be participating in that briefing to provide information relative to our preparedness for the pending winter storm. I will pass it over to Assistant City Manager Ben Woody.
Thank you, Ms. Wesley. Appreciate the introduction. And Council, I'm going to jump right into our agenda. As always, I'll cover items of interest, but if there's anything you have a question on or you would like to discuss, just let me know. So we'll start our meeting again, as Ms. Wesley said, at 10 a.m. on Tuesday. And we have one proclamation for International Holocaust Remembrance Day. On our consent agenda, we actually, for us, have a relatively short consent agenda for this meeting. I'll start with covering item B, which is a really exciting item. And this is a resolution to enter into agreements with 4 local grant administration subrecipients who will administer our CDBG-DR small business support program. So this is a big milestone for the community in terms of getting money out into the community to support our business recovery. These particular 4 subrecipients will disperse approximately $15 million in grant funding to eligible small businesses, which is intended to help those businesses meet their ongoing recovery needs. Just want to flag that our PEDE City Council committee, discussed this at their January meeting, and they did recommend approval to full council. Item C is another item that was discussed at PEDE this month. This item directs the city attorney to intervene in the North Carolina Utilities Commission docket regarding Duke Energy's carbon plan. The concept of intervening is something that is supported by our MCAP goal of monitoring and engaging in state level and utility policies on climate and sustainability. One note I'll flag from PEDE is they did recommend approval to full council with the condition that draft comments, which our city attorney will coordinate, will be shared back to council before the official submittal to the Utilities Commission. Go ahead, Councilwoman Roney.
Thank you, Ben. I think you articulated that very well following our conversation yesterday. Just wanted to point out that the IRP mentions things like delaying the solar rollout, increasing potential for fracking, not moving forward on things like researching wind. And these are issues that are conflicting with our goals and also our community values. So one of the reasons, the purposes for bringing the comments back to us is we absolutely need to participate in formal comment and intervention. And doing that with the county, we think that that's wise. And yet, I think it should come back on us to see the final comments for that accountability to lie with this body instead of just falling on staff. So it's meant to be supportive of staff.
Yeah, thank you for that, Councilman Roney, for that additional context. I appreciate that. Moving on real quickly, item D is a grant application that Parks and Rec is pursuing, and the PARTIF fund is funded many recreation projects in North Carolina for many years. So it's a very popular grant program. And in this case, we don't have a project yet selected for that, but there are funds available that are generally for Helene recovery type projects. So we think this is, again, a good example of where we can leverage other funds to hopefully then be able to get more out of our DR funding. So again, don't have a project yet. We'll be back to council when we do, but just a good example of looking for funds to leverage anywhere we can to continue to support this recovery. Item E is a response to the auditor's findings, and we are going to have Tony McDowell discuss that during the other issues section of today's agenda. Moving down, I want to briefly discuss items G and H. These are two resolutions that authorize staff to request additional federal funds to support the remaining unmet needs for water system improvements, infrastructure, housing, and economic recovery resiliency projects. And again, another example of continuing to pursue additional sources of funds to help maximize our recovery efforts. So again, this would authorize staff to make that request to our congressional delegations. Councilwoman Ullman.
Could you just provide some more detail on which projects we're making this request as we all engage with our congressional partners and our relationships in DC? A little more detail would be helpful. And I read the request link, but yeah, just some more info would be useful as, you know, we help advocate.
Good question. And I'm going to ask either Brad Branham or Bridget Herring, who are both on the call, to give some additional detail on that question.
Good morning, council members. Bridget Herring, recovery coordinator with the city. Are we talking about the DR request, correct? Yes.
Correct. Yeah, items G and H, the resolutions.
Yep.
I think Councilwoman Ullman was asking just maybe for a little more specificity on the types of projects or what that could be used for.
Absolutely. So the additional allocation for the CDBG-DR request isn't to a specific project, but is based on the updated data using the same methodology for the unmet needs that we did when we developed the CDBG-DR action plan. So the action plan used a number of public sourced information about who is taking advantage of individual assistance, NIFP, insurance claims, those types of things. And we made some projections around our unmet needs. This is using some actual data or updated data based on what we know now in terms of the unmet need remaining in those categories. So we don't have specific projects identified for this, but know that the need in these places is great and remains. So not specific to the project level at this moment. As our allocation begins to be encumbered or committed, I think that those specific projects will become clearer.
Okay, that makes sense. And so, what pot of money is this targeting from at the federal level?
So this would be similar to the direct allocation that we received previously with our initial DR allocation.
HUD DR, so it's like another HUD DR allocation
Correct.
that the secretary has discretion over.
What would need to be allocated by Congress.
Okay.
It's the HUD secretary.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, once the action plan is approved, I don't know how much discretion we haven't. So when we went to Washington last week, the ask was for mostly additional DR money for the state of North Carolina. I think it was like 8.8 billion in the breakdown.
Got it.
You know, we've gotten 1.7 billion. So if Congress were to make that funding grant, by default, Asheville would get a portion of it because of the way they have to distribute it. And then once our plan is approved, HUD executes it. And unlike Homeland Security, HUD has been, I mean, as far as I know, right, Bridget, they've been working pretty well moving that money through. So
Agreed.
it's a good resource if we can get it to, if the governor is successful in getting Congress to include more.
So kind of the summary of what's coming to us is like, we're continuing to do our lobbying and advocating for federal money. There's a deadline coming up to put in this. It's based on unmet need. And so now's the time for us to put on the gas with our federal relationships like the mayor did last week and to keep doing that. Okay. All right. Thanks. That's just what I needed.
Thank you, Councilman Ullman, and good questions. Appreciate that. Last item on consent is item I.
And Councilwoman Roney has her hand raised, but same. Okay.
I think it was from last time. Yeah. Okay. Thank you for flagging that. Item I is related to some changes to how we conduct our grievance hearings, but we're going to talk about that under the other issues section as well. Moving on to presentations and reports, we have our statutorily required report from the Asheville Downtown Improvement District. So once a year, they have to come to council and report out on, some of their accomplishments and some of the things they plan to do moving forward. Vice Mayor Mosley and myself were at the board meeting last night, so we got a sneak preview of that report. And I think council, you'll see they've done a lot of good things in the past year. Maggie, it was too long, so we definitely told them to tighten up the timeline on that. So Maggie Burleson, that is. But it'll be a good update for council to see kind of where things are at with the ADID. Manager's report, we have Ms. Wesley's first manager's report, so we're excited about that. We're going to have, as part of that, we're going to have D. Tyrell, our Parks and Recreation Director, and he's going to discuss some of the upcoming programming that Parks has planned to celebrate Black History Month. So really excited to be able to get that on the agenda and share it before February. You have 3 public hearings scheduled. Item A, you've talked about this before. Item A is a required public hearing for a $35,000 incentive grant that supports the recent expansion of a local business. We've called this Project Vessel. As announced by the business, this is East Fork Pottery. And this incentive and their project will bring $2.5 million of new investment and 40 new jobs to the Asheville area. And again, the incentive amount is $35,000. Item B is a zoning public hearing. So again, this is a straight rezoning from RM8 to CBI, which means commercial business. This is in the Chestnut Hills area of Asheville, and the big, again, straight rezoning. So you're not able to add conditions to this. They're not limited to a particular use, but the principal difference between the 2 zoning districts is the CBI will allow for retail, office, and other commercial uses in addition to the residential uses that are allowed by RM8. And then the last public hearing is item C. This is continued from fall of 2025. So This is a staff-initiated amendment. It's a minor change to the UDO that allows existing non-conforming structures to be converted to an ADU without having to request a variance from the Board of Adjustment. So non-conforming means your structure may not meet a setback from a property line or some other dimensional requirement, and you're able to convert that structure to an ADU without having to take a trip to the Board of Adjustment. Board of Adjustment trips are expensive and add time to processes. Any questions on public hearings? Okay. Last item on the agenda is under new business, and this is a resolution to authorize us to move forward with direct home funds to our partner agencies. The home funds are administered by the city of Asheville. However, there is a consortium of multiple members of different jurisdictions that meets and works through a process to allocate these funds. This year, the partner agencies will use the home funds, which total over $1 million, to provide rental assistance, down payment assistance, and homeowner repair. And the important thing about home funds are, while we are the administrative body for those funds, those monies or funds typically are distributed throughout a 4-county area. So you'll see projects that aren't necessarily located in Asheville, but they are an appropriate use of home funds in our region. Any questions on the council agenda? Okay, then I'm going to move to council committees, and I will turn it over to Jade Dundas to review public safety.
Thank you, Ben, and good morning, everyone. Jade Dundas, Assistant City Manager. So on January 29th at 11 a.m., the Public Safety Committee will meet, and the main topics on that agenda will be a Asheville Fire Department quarterly update, and specifically related to the Resource and Engagement Support Team, otherwise known as REST. This will provide some information related to their operations and how they conduct the business every day. But it will also provide some information, statistics on how they have been engaging with the public and how they're working through their day-to-day activities. REST was a little bit of a topic at the last council meeting, so it felt like this was timely as well. Item 4 on that agenda is a APD quarterly update. This is the end of the year crime statistics. APD routinely comes and provides quarterly updates, and so this is just that routine sharing of information, and that will be presented by APD management. And then the third main item, which is item number 5 on the agenda, is abandoned and dilapidated structures ordinance change discussion. This will be mainly led by Mark Matheny. In a previous public safety meeting, the existing ordinance was discussed. And this ordinance revision, as it's being reviewed at this point in time, helps to shore up some administrative pieces, but also Mr. Matheny will provide some information related to how they feel like in order to be more effective with ensuring compliance throughout the city for residential and commercial properties, that they are proposing, but we'll provide some information to propose how they grow the program in their shop, and how that they could effectively implement the ordinance. As also it helps to create alignment with state statute too. The action here is not to suggest an amendment to council necessarily. It's just really to allow staff the opportunity to present the information, and then also to get some guidance on how to continue to move forward with ordinance development. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Jade. Appreciate that review. So again, moving on the 8-week agenda, the look ahead. We don't necessarily have a lot of items on that look ahead, but we have one very important item, which is our budget. So I just want to flag a few dates on that. because this upcoming meeting is not at a typical time, we have the budget public comment scheduled for February 10th. So for those that want to come to the council meeting and provide public comment, February 10th would be an opportunity for that. Another date I want to flag is on March 24th, and we have work sessions along the way for the budget, but on March 24th, that would be the meeting where you would adopt any changes to the fees and charges ordinance. And we typically do those in advance of the regular budget. So that's kind of following our typical timeline. So your second meeting in March, look for discussion and potential adoption of fees and charges changes. Then just flagging for the community right now, tentatively, we have our budget public hearing, which we're required to have, scheduled for May 26th. And then we have our budget adoption scheduled for June 9th. Those dates could change, but the one thing we do have to do is we have to adopt a budget this fiscal year for next year's budget. Any questions on the look ahead? If not, I will turn it over to Ms. Wesley to move us into other items and updates.
Thank you, Ben. We'll go ahead and get started with an update from Tony McDowell, who will provide an update in reference to item E, I believe, on the agenda around our audit update. The ask here is that you all provide signature confirming the updates that we have with our external audit. Tony.
Thanks, DK, and good morning, everyone. And thanks for the opportunity to come back and continue the conversation about the fiscal year 25 audit. Before I get to the letter specifically, I just wanted to remind council and everyone of the presentation that we heard from our external auditors at Cherry Beckert back on December 9th. That was presented to the council on that date. And just some of the key takeaways from that, again, as a reminder, was that we did complete the fiscal year 2025 year-end financial statements as scheduled in November. Our audit firm at Cherry Beckert issued the highest level of assurance, the highest opinion they can issue, which is what's called the unmodified or clean opinion of our financial statements. They did identify one accounting error, which they went over with you all on December 9th. That did result in a finding and is one of the reasons we have to submit the letter that I'll go over in a minute. We also highlighted for you all on December 9th that our unassigned fund balance did decline last year to 14%. And you all have seen that slide again saw that slide again at the January budget work session as well. And again, that was one of the reasons we have to submit this letter to the state. And then the last thing I'd highlight on this slide that we pointed out to you all is because of the federal government shutdown, our auditors did not get the required compliance information that they needed to complete what's called the single audit, which is the audit of our grants, in time to present that to you all in December. They are in the process of finishing that up. You see here when we talked to you all in December, we mentioned that the LGC had extended that deadline until February 12th. Our auditors are in the final stages of finishing that work right now. We hope to have it done next week. And I point that out because we will have them come back and present that report to you all sometime in February. And so you'll be hearing more from us about the single audit before that's officially wrapped up as well. But again, the main reason I'm here today is to talk about the letter that's on you all's agenda next week. It's part of a program that the LGC implemented back in fiscal year 2021. They have approximately 20 financial performance indicators that they look at each year when a local government is completing its audit. And if any of those indicators are negative, then the governing board, you all have to submit a response to the LGC within 60 days of the audit presentation with a letter that's signed by the majority of the board, outlining what occurred and also the steps being taken to prevent recurrence. And in that last bullet, you all can see when we presented this information to you all back in December, we indicated that council would be required to submit the letter, and it would be in response to the material weakness finding around the accounts payable error and also the decrease in total general fund balance. So the main reason I'm here today, and again, I'm going to take down my slides, and the letter I think is attached to you all's agenda today, and happy to answer any specific questions you all may have about that. But the one thing that came up when we actually submitted our information through the LGC portal, there was a third financial performance indicator that got triggered, and that related to our water fund. And again, we had not highlighted this to you all back in December, so I wanted to make sure I covered it with you all today. And that financial performance indicator related to what's called net income in the water fund. And as you all might have guessed, that number, that net income, which is typically positive for our water fund, was negative in fiscal year 2025. And that was directly the result of the impact of Tropical Storm Helene. As you all know, we had 2 months where we didn't collect any revenue during that outage. So that obviously impacted the amount of revenue we collected. And then on the expense side, we did have some expenses, obviously, for repair, which we have not gotten full reimbursement or had not gotten full reimbursement from FEMA as of June 30, 2025. And so that net income in the water fund was negative for fiscal year 2025. We don't expect that to occur again. In most years, the net income in the water fund is positive. And so again, we look at this as really a one-time occurrence, and we highlighted that in the letter that we have prepared to send to the LGC. So I think with that, I will stop there and see if you all have any questions about that item or either of the other 2 items that are discussed in the letter. Okay, well, thank you all very much. And if any questions come up, be happy to answer them on Tuesday when we have the meeting. I see Councilmember Hess, you have your hand raised.
Yes, Tony, thank you so much for all this work. I actually meant to raise my hand at the 8-week agenda look ahead. So it doesn't actually have to pertain to what you were saying. So I'll wait until you're completely done.
Okay. Well, I'll just say thanks once again, and look forward to seeing you all on Tuesday.
Thank you, Tony. Any other questions? If no questions for Tony, Councilmember Hess, if you want to ask your question before we go into the next item.
Yes, thank you, DK. I had a chance to meet with some community members about a 4th Amendment resolution for the city. And had a chance to also speak with Brad Branham, our city attorney, and the mayor about this. And I was hoping that we could bring this, Mayor, to our policy, finance, and infrastructure meeting. And then if all goes well there, get that on the February 24th agenda.
Yep, thanks, Councilmember Hess. I think there's some interest on council in pursuing a 4th Amendment resolution, and we'll need to talk too with DK, get you up to speed on what this is we're talking about, and loop Brad in. I do think since it is a resolution, and I've looked at the wording of some of them, that it would be appropriate to bring it to policy finance, which is the full council. I think our next policy finance is scheduled for, correct me if I'm wrong, maybe Maggie Burleson knows, but the second meeting in February, before the second meeting in February. Yes, people are nodding. So.
Correct. It's February 24, Mayor.
Yeah. Council, is everyone familiar with this type of resolution? This is, just want to make sure there aren't any questions or objections about bringing it forward to policy finance in February.
No objection. I'm not exactly familiar with it, but I've certainly have had members of the public ask me about it. So it'll be very helpful to me. I just saw an email from him, as a matter of fact. So yeah, I would love to see it.
Yeah, I sent a email with a second draft resolution that more closely resembles the one from Durham and Carborough, because I've worked with Durham and Carborough on this in statewide information sessions. I'm happy to provide additional information. Effectively what the 4th Amendment workplace training does for staff is if a water department staff or sanitation, fire, police, any staff member of the city would have the training for what to do if they are the victim or witness of a violation of their Fourth Amendment rights to due process. So there are some articles and some information on the Durham and Carrboro website. So I've sent links to those as well as a draft resolution for consideration.
All right.
Yeah, I with all of these sort of council initiated resolutions, I always want to make sure that whatever we're directing staff to do in those resolutions, that they have the capacity and ability to actually execute on them. And in this case, because there's obviously a series of approaches of dealing with ICE infiltration into our communities. We always want to check with our community partners, and thank you, Councilmember Hess, for doing that, to make sure that there's not concern in the community about taking certain actions. Always a fine line of balancing, protecting our community with drawing unnecessary attention to our community, like we're seeing in Minneapolis. So I don't, I think we're trying to find a good place that is supported by the community, that also makes clear our values and our position as a city with regard to this situation.
Thank you, Mayor. We'll slate it for the 24th, and we'll have some time to have some additional discussions about the operational implications, depending on what direction you go in.
Yeah, we'll need to let you look at the versions. The earlier version I saw last week that Brad and I were looking at from Durham looked like it had a fairly limited requirement on the part of whatever city staff needed to execute on it. So, that definitely is a concern that we need to track.
All right.
That's helpful. Okay, I'm happy to connect you with the Carrboro town manager who's offered some support. There is some additional flexibility in the second draft that I sent to the management team and the council, in that instead of naming one training partner, it may include other training partners as well. And that's why Carrboro and Durham provided more flexibility.
Thank you, Councilmember Brownie. That'd be helpful. All right, so our last item under other items is a discussion around our grievance policy. And Emily Provence, who is our Human Resources Director, will present information around that. But before she does that, I wanted to share with you all, prior to my arrival, there were some discussions happening, and I appreciate you all slowing those down and giving me the opportunity to spend some more time, some fact finding, and spend time with staff. I've had some conversations and I have a few more pending. I am, though, happy to share that in short order, we've been able, in coordination with Brad and his team, to present some recommended revisions to the grievance ordinance for your consideration. We believe that the language therein will support ensuring that staff has adequate support, but also maintaining the fidelity of the grievance process. And so this does not include anything related to the Civil Service Board. This is directly related to grievances through departments up to the city manager. And so Emily will talk more about that. The other thing I want to share is that we are also, you may also be aware that staff is working to review administrative policies. And there are a couple of policies that we have prioritized based on the information that I have now. And one of those policies is the grievance ordinance. Again, Emily will talk more about that, but the other one is our drug testing policy. And so that is not on any look forward because it's an administrative policy, but we are working diligently on updating that. The last update was in 2011, which was some time ago. So I think there's an opportunity to refresh how we move forward with that policy, more information coming on that. The other item that you do not see on a look forward and you also don't see on the agenda for the 27th is a conversation around a potential mid-year adjustment to our salary plan and salaries for those employees hired after the cutoff date of July 1st. And that's not there because my ask is that council allows staff to consider compensation changes, pay plan structure in alignment with our FY 2027 budget process. On the 13th, staff came forward and shared north of $30 million worth of additional costs that we need to consider as a part of the 2027 budget process. That is going to be a challenge within itself, but it's still very early in the process. So there are things that we know we need to contend with, but there are things that we do not know. And so to ensure the fidelity of the process and to, quite frankly, give you all visibility on all of the expenditure and revenue challenges that we have, I would ask that we not go forward with the menu adjustment and structure change for our pay plan, but instead consider that as a part of the process. We are in the throes of the budget process. We're starting to have those conversations internally, and we'll be bringing forward information to you really soon. And so that is why you do not see that here today on the 27th, and you also don't see that on the look forward. So I just wanted to have that conversation here and share some reasoning behind that and ask for your support in doing that as a part of the budget process. If there are no questions or comments on that, I'll turn it over to Emily, and Brad will support her in the update on the grievance process.
DK, I think Bo's, no, doesn't have his hand right. I just wanted to thank you. I know you just started last week and we had kind of this sort of burning that we needed to have addressed right away. And I know you've got a meeting later today with representatives from the Firefighter Association.
I do.
So I'm grateful that you're able to move ahead the ordinance clarification, if you will, regarding representation in the hearings, and that you all are looking at revising our overall policies regarding drug testing. And I think we are obviously challenged with a budget shortfall this year. We don't know what our revenues look like. We know that any changes or increases to the budget right now mean a transfer from our fund balance, which is already below our 15% policy. And council, just so you're aware, and some of you may already be aware, but the North Carolina General Assembly is conducting a series of hearings during the recess, between sessions right now at the General Assembly. And they heard last month from a representative from an individual from Buncombe County on a number of items regarding Asheville and Buncombe County around DEI issues on this. I'm just using that terminology. And because Asheville and Buncombe County were not invited to respond to this person, we now have been invited to respond to them next month on February 11th. And Brad is helping kind of help us with that. And the manager and myself and Brad will be attending that along with county representatives. And just last week, they added a little addendum to what they want to hear about from us. And they included our publicized budget shortfall for this next year. So the General Assembly is now like to hear some information from us about that. And so Tony is going to have the pleasure of talking about our budget even more, but this time to the General Assembly. So I just wanted to let you all have some context for sort of the big picture and what we're dealing with. They haven't made any, they haven't made any kind of threats or anything like that. But they want to understand exactly what's driving the shortfall for this coming year. So I think I'm glad that Manager Wesley is getting in there and getting up to speed on all the things. Probably the manager's biggest job every year is to recommend a budget, and so that's a big task this year.
So I have a question, and it's not really about the subject at hand, but I did notice a difference in the use of language, Mayor, between you and DK, and I'm just wondering which way, when I'm speaking to constituents, which way I should discuss the 30 million. I appreciated it when DK referred to it as an increase in costs. I think people are assuming we have some type of deficit from last time. So how should we refer to it?
You're right. You're right. We need to be careful with the terminology.
Okay, so it's
it is kind of technically a combination of increase in cost primarily, but there are a couple of items that we were able to defer from last year or that we covered through fund balance that we now have to cover in the operating budget.
Okay.
So it's a little bit of a blend, I would say.
Okay,
but Tony, you tell me if I just said that wrong. But
yeah, I'll jump in quickly, and words matter for sure. And I know we had this conversation with one of the reporters who was reporting on this. And I think when you use the term deficit, to me that implies we are currently in a deficit, right? Like we in the current fiscal year, we're looking at a revenue shortfall that our expenses are going to exceed our revenues, and that's not where we're at, right? We're talking about looking ahead to next year, and so I guess I would call it an initial budget gap. And it is very much based on expected expenditure increases, like the mayor said. And, we're doing a lot of work to nail down those numbers and also to look at our potential revenue increases for next year as well to hopefully start shrinking that projected gap for next year. But I definitely would not call it a deficit.
And then further, I'll add, I think gap is the right term because we're assuming, because we don't know what our revenue is going to look like. So if we assume that our revenue remains the same, we know that there's a gap between revenues and expenditures. I think Councilmember Hess.
Thank you, DK. I just want to register that I am a little concerned about at least from my point of view, not paying our city employees and especially our firefighters and public safety folks what I think the intent of what we thought we passed last year, especially since we are coming into a increased cost / gap / deficit for this year's budget. It may be 2 or 3 years before we actually get to address that pay range. And if we're at 30 million of a increased cost, I'm not sure why we would not, in my view, do the right thing for our public safety folks and public workers and make it 30 million.25. I just want to throw that out there that I hope that we can get this on a future agenda as soon as possible.
Thank you, Councilmember Hess, for your feedback in respects to that. I think what I can commit to is in the future more clarity around the decisions that you all make as a part of the budget process. What's difficult for me is making changes that not just impacts our current financial state, but also a long-term stability from a financial perspective. So I absolutely appreciate your comments on that. I want to continue to have conversations about how we include our employees in discussions and also our partners in those discussions as we're making those decisions to be as transparent as possible. Sorry, Councilmember Roney.
Thank you. Maybe I'm missing something because I thought we were having 2 parallel conversations. One is the misunderstandings or miscommunication, however that landed, the mutual shared responsibility around what it means to have that difference between a pay raise and a pay grade adjustment. But we also were talking in our 3x3s and then in our one-on-ones and then in the budget work session about the fact that our fire department is unique in its scheduling. And so therefore working 832 additional hours every year. And we had 13 firefighters hired 5 days after the budget passed. So I thought we were looking at 2 parallel tracks. One was for the entire organization, but another one was for these 13 firefighters. And I thought we were having a conversation. I certainly support making that level of budget adjustment expedited, but I just wanted to make sure that we were still talking about the two parallel issues.
There's definitely two conversations that can be had, but they're connected, Councilmember Roney. And so from my perspective, I totally support, I always say we're here to help the helpers, and our fire and our public safety are the helpers, right? And so there's strong consideration to where they are with regard to compensation, which I think we really need to deal with as a part of our budget process. The other piece of that is post July 1st, we had, and I don't have the number off the top of my head, but we have made quite a few hires across our organization and our other departments, public works, just across the gamut, general government. And those folks also did not receive, because they weren't employees at the cutoff, receive the benefit of that raise. And so I'm mindful of the impact across the organization. And again, balancing those potential inequities with the fact that we have some other expenditure and revenue challenges as well. So again, for me, it's really important for you all to have complete visibility on all of the issues that we have that impact our budget currently and in the long term. And to be able to make really informed decisions about how we move forward. It's difficult to do that when we have one-off mid-year adjustments, especially those that might adversely impact our financial outlook. So
I appreciate that. And to be consistent, I do understand that we have pay equity issues organization-wide. And yet this department is unique, and that's why I appreciate you hearing my concern.
Oh, you're on mute, DK.
all right, let's try this. Can y'all hear me?
Yep.
If no other comments, I'll turn it over to Emily, who's been waiting patiently to give us, provide us more detail on the revisions around the grievance process.
Thanks, DK. Good morning. It's good to be here this morning. Brad, feel free to jump in as needed. I just want to provide some context and some detail around the ordinance change that you will be voting on Tuesday. So as part of our commitment to ensure that our employees are treated fairly and equitably, the City of Asheville allows employees a protected right to grieve through their supervisory chain up to the city manager. And our current framework for that process is detailed in our ordinance. There is currently no standalone administrative grievance policy to support that. Brad and I's teams have been working since the fall to draft a formal administrative policy and then also update our grievance forms to align with the ordinance. I think that's really important to clarify the process for our employees so they can understand their rights and more easily move through the process. That update is expected to be completed sometime in March of 2026. However, there have been some recent requests around union representation in grievance hearings. And so in order to address those requests, we are bringing forward a partial amendment to the ordinance. And we did some research and had a lot of discussion to ensure that all of our employees, regardless of what department they work in or whether or not they enjoy association membership, would have access to the same supports. And so employees have the right to be assisted during a grievance hearing by an attorney licensed in North Carolina. And the update to the ordinance will also allow employees to bring one additional support person. And that person is defined as an active or retired City of Asheville employee. Since the licensed attorney is permitted to assist support, the support person is there to provide moral support only and cannot speak on behalf of the employees. Using a support person versus just calling out union representation ensures, again, that all of our employees have access to the same level of support if they take a grievance forward. And the final part of the ordinance change details that the city manager retains the authority to set parameters consistent with the ordinance to ensure that the hearings remain efficient and legally compliant. So I believe the language is in the staff report that Brad submitted. In red, it's section E of the ordinance, and happy to take questions or comments at this time. Councilwoman Moody.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you so much for the way this is worded. I think especially if anyone's a new employee or isn't in City Hall regularly, just coming into that space, it can be intimidating the first time you come in the building. So I appreciate the expansion of the language so that if an employee doesn't have an organization but has a current or former fellow employee, that they'll, have hopefully more sense of belonging, which I think we desire at an organizational level. But also not everyone will know their rights as workers. So it's really much appreciated the work that's gone into this, the way that it's drafted. And I understand that it has our organizational support from groups like the IAFF.
Great, thank you. Definitely a team effort.
Any other questions or comments for Emily? If not, that's all we have for agenda briefing. I'll turn it back over to Mayor Manheimer.
Okay, all right, everybody. I know we're anticipating Snowmageddon here in North Carolina, and the governor's declared a state of emergency. We do have a press conference at 1 o'clock, and DK, I assume you're participating in that. This is just like we remember from the hurricane. This will be a county-led emergency operation process that we fall under. And the governor has declared a state of emergency. I have been talking with the county chair and with DK and Avril about whether or not we need to declare a state of emergency here locally. So stay tuned on that issue. But otherwise, everyone, please stay safe, and we will see you soon.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Thanks.